Hi everyone, I'm Chris Peterson, Senior Director of Product Management at Heroku by Salesforce, and welcome to our session, Heroku Accelerates the Path to Cloud Native. So, of course, since I'm talking roadmap and pilot programs today, I'll bring up the most exciting part of any reInvent session, the legal disclaimers. But in all seriousness, Salesforce Legal does want me to take a moment and remind you to make any and all purchasing decisions based on generally available functionality and not any forward-looking statements or roadmap items. With that, let's set the stage. We're going to start with a quick recap of Heroku and the core values that are woven into everything that we do. Then I'm going to give you a first look at the next generation of the Heroku platform and how we're going big on cloud native standards. And as with any good session, there's a little bit of optional homework, specifically signing up for the pilot programs for our next gen platform, our new AI inference add-on, or even building .NET apps on Heroku. That one doesn't require a sign up. And if I hit my timing right, we'll have a couple of minutes left over for questions. Otherwise, I'll take them over there outside the tables. So with that, let's dive in. If you aren't already familiar with Heroku, or maybe it's been a while, let's take a quick look at what we do and how we do it. And of course, if you're here, it's almost certain that you've experienced the excitement of building an app to production, from that ideation to building a proof of concept and shipping that first MVP. But on day two, when you have customers and it's time to iterate your app, is really where the complexity begins. Managing backups, disaster recovery plans, production deployment pipelines, compliance audits, patching, and the list goes on in terms of things that are a drag on your team, shifting a meaningful chunk of their work away from what makes your app or experience unique to undifferentiated heavy lifting. And that's not to mention the extra on-call burden that can definitely impact the work-life balance and be a real hit to morale of your team if they get pages for things that could have been avoided. Ultimately, making all of this complexity easy, and not just on day one, but throughout the whole life cycle of your application, is really what Heroku is all about. It's a set of design principles that is really fundamental to Heroku to save you this time, energy, and let you get back to what's important. And that opinionated design started all the way back when Heroku changed the world with how we deploy apps. Git push Heroku main. This seamless deployment experience with tools you already use daily has been at the core of what developers love about Heroku since the fateful decision back in 2007 to make this how you deploy. It's been the top of our values to keep a simple and powerful developer experience and stay true to what that represents. Supported by a similarly opinionated networking stack, a wonderful set of add-on partners, fully managed infrastructure and data services, and well beyond, Heroku is a platform with strong opinions, but ones that are generally lightly held in the event that you need to deviate from them, at least one or two. And as we launch the next generation of Heroku, you can imagine that some of these values are changing and evolving. But largely, no. They've served us well for 17 years, and while we're evolving the technology stack of how we deliver Heroku service, staying true to our roots was a very deliberate design decision. We've seen customers with one developer transform their business just as effectively as those with hundreds or thousands, and that's a power and legacy that we refuse to abandon. So instead, we're taking an evolutionary approach. This next generation is built on a foundation of cloud-native technologies, open source standards, and things that ensure portability, interoperability, and a vibrant ecosystem for your applications. So by embracing technologies like Open Container Initiative, Cloud Native Build Packs, Open Telemetry, and Kubernetes, we're providing a platform that's not only powerful, but also incredibly flexible. And by building on these open source foundations, Heroku avoids reinventing the wheel and aligns with open standards across the industry. We can focus our energy on doing what we do best, creating that smooth and productive developer experience, and bringing that attention to the cloud native ecosystem and enabling end user adoption. And as you see, 40% increased developer productivity and 30% reduction in DevOps expenses are what we've seen from the studies we've conducted of our customers, which is a pretty tangible uplift in terms of saving you time and energy. And of course, as you'd expect from a platform with 17 years of history and counting, Heroku's been battle tested across an exceptionally wide set of verticals and customer scale. From high tech to retail, to hospitality, to healthcare, customers seamlessly deliver their connected experiences on Heroku every day. I fall back to the story of Health Sherpa, since it feels so personal after watching a friend who had their life saved by health insurance availability and the ACA earlier this year during a bout with cancer. And Health Sherpa paired with Heroku does ACA open enrollment, and for the last year enrolled over 6 million Americans in healthcare during a 1-month open enrollment period, which means they have no idea when their load spikes are going to come in. It's when people have time after dinner. During their peak load, they had over 30,000 SQL queries per second. And when all was said and done, again, 6 million Americans got healthcare with no downtime. And again, Health Sherpa was able to focus entirely on the healthcare sign-up process and not patching, database maintenance, scaling, etc. Statistically, that translates to over 4,000 lives saved. In a very different use case, T-Mobile also uses Heroku heavily, especially Heroku Connect to sync hundreds of millions of rows of data to Postgres and then with multiple Salesforce organizations. They also build a handful of key apps, including a Heroku app to manage customer experiences in store and manage those customer wait times. Seeing 30% increase in customer satisfaction is pretty impressive. But a personal favorite of mine is the story of Leather Spa. With a developer team of 1, they used Heroku to handle all the boring parts of platform and operations so they could focus entirely on what mattered, reducing the customer order turnaround time and doubling down on their online sales. Ultimately, those doubling down doubled their sales. And they also delivered more impactful metrics to leadership using Heroku data clips. And I'll sneak in one last quote because I love it so much. Felix Reisberg of the Electron Project just did a guest post on the Heroku blog, and he said something about Heroku that is just warmed my heart in terms of the best praise I could ever receive. We like Heroku as much as we like electricity coming out of our sockets. It's essential to the work that we do, yet never a headache or a problem that needs to be solved. And that's exactly what we aspire to be. Never in your way, always helping you be more productive. And this really all ties back to the 12-factor app manifesto, which introduced a new way of thinking about application development and popularized application principles like stateless applications, automated builds, and, well, another 10 factors, encouraging to build applications that are developer, horizontally scalable, and resilient. And it extended beyond our own user base. It shaped how the industry builds and deploys applications. These principles were adopted by ecosystems like the Spring community and would ultimately become one of the fundamental principles of the cloud-native ecosystem movement. It laid a foundation for the technologies that define the cloud-native landscape today. And given that that was all the way back in 2011 when that launched, it's aged with remarkable grace. But it is ready for a refresh. I'm not sure how many of you have seen, but we've announced we're open sourcing 12-factor. And it's not just a licensing change. We're partnering with collaborators from across the cloud-native ecosystem like IBM, Google, and of course, given it reInvent, our friends at AWS, to update these standards. And we welcome contributions on GitHub from any of you that happen to have strong opinions about application design best practices. In fact, Vish, our chief architect, is in the audience, and if you submit a pull request, you may get to interact with him. But what I'm here for really is, with the stage set, let's take a closer look at what the next generation of Heroku really entails, what it looks like, and what the core of our platform is going to evolve into. So today, we're launching a pilot for the next generation of our private spaces product, named Fur, based on our history of codenaming our platform after trees. What does this mean for you? It means that Heroku is now powered by Kubernetes and Carpenter to give us a tremendous amount of flexibility on sizing and number of compute offerings that we make available. We're adopting Graviton compute instead of just x86 to give you flexibility in how you build and structure your workloads. And with the change over to cloud-native build packs and their multi-architecture support, that adoption of Graviton is generally seamless to you as an end user unless you have native extensions in your application. And talking about builds, given the rise of data residency, we now run all of your application builds for Fur within the same space, meaning you get benefits like stable outbound IPs, private networking features, improved data residency, and beyond. Back to that whole thing about cloud-native standards, we're leaning big into OpenTelemetry, moving away from Heroku's traditional syslog drains to OpenTelemetry syncs. And beyond logs, we're adding native support for OpenTelemetry metrics and distributed tracing, including throughout our the parts of the platform that we control, because what's the point of distributed tracing if our router and beyond don't have support for it? And beyond basics of networking, we recently added HTTP2 support, and we're adding entirely new networking capabilities on this new stack, starting first with VPC privately early next year, but going beyond that to global accelerator for DDoS prevention and well beyond. So let's look a little bit deeper at what Heroku contains and what it abstracts. Of course, with any abstraction, behind that simplicity is a fair bit of complexity. But ultimately, that's really the point. Heroku provides an opinionated platform specifically so that you can build apps easily, launch seamlessly, and scale them effortlessly. But beneath that simplicity of git push Heroku main that made us famous lies a platform that uses well over a dozen AWS services and a full stack from infrastructure provisioning, builds, a container registry, a compute layer, managed databases, and oh, so much more. And now, as we embrace the next generation of Heroku, you'll again see some differences, but much like our values, the majority of what we're doing is remaining true to our roots. We're adopting EKS as the new foundation of our compute layer instead of our own custom solution on top of EC2. We're adopting new AWS services from Global Accelerator, Private Link, CloudFront, and AWS Transit Gateway. But ultimately, the reason you should care about this is that it enables us to move faster and deliver new capabilities at a rate that we haven't before. So this enables us to build AI inference and agentic AI solutions on top of the platform, as simple as you add any other type of Heroku add-on. It enables new API and event-driven Salesforce integration products for those of you who happen to be customers of our corporate overlords. And a refreshed lineup of more flexible compute options are just a few that we're getting started with. Now, of course, as with all things Heroku, all it took was a quick CLI command to rebase all of Heroku onto Kubernetes. Well, maybe not. It turns out that's not actually a real Heroku command. But ultimately, what we wanted to do is make it this easy for you to rebase onto Kubernetes, even if we spent the last couple of years working on this. And ultimately, what does that look like? It means using the Heroku CLI to create a private space is as simple as doing that traditionally, with one extra option, specifying the generation of your private space as fur. Creating an app, specifying the stack as a cloud-native build pack application, means that we will be generating OCI images, running those on EKS, but in a fully managed system, just like you would expect from Heroku's developer experience. So with two very minor changes to how you interact with Heroku, fully on Kubernetes and embracing these new cloud-native standards. And with OpenTelemetry, it ends up being much the same. Instead of setting up Heroku log drains like you would traditionally, you add an OTel drain at either the app level or for the entire private space that would cover all applications within it. And then Heroku does all the rest, including exposing a pre-configured OTel SDK, so all you have to do is emit logs, metrics, and traces, and all the plumbing of how they get delivered is done through simple CLI commands that configure those delivery syncs for you. No boilerplate in your apps is something that we're really happy about. It really stays true to that developer experience at our core. The boilerplate that slows you down getting started and maintaining is the type of thing that getting rid of is core to our DNA. And of course, this is just the start. We're going to continue to invest in OTel big time. We have work already planned for things like automating the collection of your JVM garbage collection or your Node.js event loops without you having to do any extra work. So automatically instrumenting the language metrics that are common to your ecosystem, so that again, one less piece of boilerplate for you to get started. There's a quote from Terrence Lee, who's an architect who was instrumental in the Fur platform. Ultimately, Fur is about bringing cloud native to everyone, and it's built to be the next foundation for Heroku in the next decade and beyond. Our last stack, Cedar, launched 11 years ago, as a platform for the next decade, so it's actually held up pretty well. But given we're entering a new decade and the evolving of the cloud native ecosystem, it's time for us to evolve in the same way. And of course, beyond just the core of the platform, we're excited to announce official support for .NET on Heroku, entering public beta today. So anyone can build and develop applications with C#, F#, Visual Basic, and use .NET staple frameworks like ASP.NET Core and Blazor, all with the simplicity and familiarity of the Heroku platform. .NET's been one of the most requested frameworks to join our lineup for years, and given that .NET is now known for its power and versatility and how it enables developers to build high-performance APIs, complex full-stack web applications, and scalable microservices, it meshes pretty well with our core values, and it was time. So we added our entire first new language ecosystem in 9 years. Very excited to see this ship. And this is not something you have to sign up for. I'll have a link to the Getting Started guide at the end. If you want to start working with this today, well, it is a beta. It's ready to go if you're so inclined. And of course, it's that same Heroku workflow that you know and expect. Git push Heroku main with zero configuration of your application to get a .NET app up and running in production. And even beyond that, now that it's an official build pack instead of a community build pack, you have the full support of Heroku support, professional services, and engineering behind you if you ever encounter any issues, instead of relying on community support. We also are announcing our first foray into the AI space. So this is another pilot we're launching today, our managed AI inference service. And this is, as you would expect from Heroku, as simple as provisioning a Heroku add-on, one CLI command, and then using any one of the OpenAI compatible client libraries for your language of choice, and then getting started by tapping into industry-leading models from Anthropic, Cohere, Stability, and more. There's also an agentic workflow that's natively supported using a standard set of built-in tools, which support tool use and provided tools for everything from querying databases to spidering a website and digesting its content into the model. And there's also a unique tool that we're fairly proud of, especially as we shore up the security model behind it, the ability to invoke a Heroku one-off dyno and run code that's generated by your AI model. So if you have things like analytics that generate Python code, be able to run those in a one-off dyno where you choose what resources it has access to. You can give it access to your database or not, or the web or not, and have a relatively secure sandbox for that type of operation is something that we haven't seen in other platforms. So capitalizing on bringing AI to the runtime that we have is something we are excited to see what people start to build with. And again, this is just the start of our AI journey. From AI-enabled dynos, where there's a GPU directly embedded in the dyno, if you want something more down to the metal than a managed service, is on our roadmap, and much more. And of course, given that we're a Salesforce company, if you know anything about Salesforce, you've probably heard about the Agentforce push that's going on. And if you're a Salesforce customer, Heroku is a very natural pairing to this agentic model, letting you build and run custom actions for Agentforce in any of the Heroku languages and seamlessly import them through our new integrations pilot, where all of the authentication, all of the external service stub generation, and inclusion in the Salesforce platform is done for you with, again, one CLI command, trying to remove the boilerplate and the obstacles that keep you from being productive and let you focus on what you need to build. It handles the authentication, the session management, all out of the box for you. And again, makes those actions show up in Flow and Apex if you're familiar with those and are interested. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming, for your attention. Check us out at the Salesforce booth, 740. We have a Heroku corner with some great demos, as well as watching the Compute from Anywhere, Compute Innovation for Any Application Anywhere keynote this afternoon, where our CTO, Gail Frederick, is presenting alongside some AWS leadership. And we have a public roadmap on GitHub where we'd love your feedback. Want features? Want to give us feedback? Open an issue and we'll take a look and get back to you. We'd love to hear from you. And finally, those QR codes I promised you. The first, our pilot for the next generation of the Heroku platform, the Kubernetes-based FUR. Sign up for the Managed Inference pilot program, and no sign up needed, just directly getting started with .NET, if you are so inclined. And it looks like I'm out of time for questions, but I'll stick around with a few of the Heroku architects and engineers over there after this, and be very happy to take questions and comments.